Hello, this is a Brave Knight Mercenary spotlight on Nartas. Nartas is a legendary magician and is one of the 6 devils. Nartas is a genius mage who came upon cursed demonic power during his arcane magic research. With help from his companion Rachael, the two performed an experiment where she would use her family's secret technique called the Madness Grab and transplant the power to one of his arms. With no surprise, the experiment resulted in tragedy. An explosion killed his family and Nartas himself was cursed with a demonic energy that prevented him from aging. He held on to his regret and chose the life of a hermit and decided to only emerge in times of crisis where his cursed power could be used for good, while Rachael hopes to reunite with Nartas and heal his demonic arm to undo their mistake. I'll briefly go over Nartas' skills, gameplay style, and provide some of my opinions on him. I won't be going over the details of his skills, but just the general parts of it. I linked the Brave Knight Encyclopedia in the video description where you can easily read on his stats and skill values. Nartas' first skill is Nullifier. He removes all enemy buffs before attacking. At +9, he also applies buff prohibition for 12 turns. Nartas' second skill is Disaster Bash. Nartas ignores defense and deals additional damage. After attacking, he also gains healing for a few turns. The healing buff also provides him with additional defense. At +12, Disaster Bash also comes with a new sub-skill called Spell Memorization. This allows Nartas to be immediately in cast ready state after attacking, meaning that Nartas can keep attacking every round after his first attack without the need to charge. Do note that Spell Memorization is affected by buff prohibition. If Nartas attacks while having buff prohibition, he won't receive Spell Memorization and will have to charge next turn like a regular mage. Nartas' third skill is Taunt Ignore. Nartas ignores Taunt for 24 turns. At +6 and above, Nartas permanently ignores Taunt. Nartas' awakening skill is Debuff Immunity. Nartas is immune to all debuffs. At +11 and above, Nartas gains damage reduction, but it means little because Nartas does not have a lot of health to allow surviving most attacks. Nartas is played as a powerful lane sweeper. With his ability to hit every enemy in a lane while also ignoring taunt and enemy defense, Nartas is one of the game's more straightforward but destructive mages. Nartas does a lot of damage and his Nullifier and buff prohibition makes him fantastic for removing any problematic enemy buffs. Nartas himself is also debuff immune, but he is not tanky. Nartas is one of the more fragile mages out there, so he has to be safeguarded. Nartas' Taunt Ignore ensures that he will always strike the lane that he is facing. Being taunt immune is very valuable for a character like Nartas. I'll go over what Nartas counters. Nartas generally deals enough damage to kill most units that do not have high HP or damage reduction. Nartas' ability to ignore defense allows him to do well against units that solely rely on 100% defense to survive. Nartas does especially well against Eden, Dalby, and Angelica. Levia and Orfina can be tricky to kill even if Nartas ignores defense. Nartas' defense ignoring additional damage is still affected by damage reduction, so he'll need buffs to reliably one-shot Levia or Orfina due to their decent HP pool and damage reduction, especially if the Nartas is of not high skill rank. Because Nartas has Nullifier when he attacks, he is good for clearing out Belieth buff units without them leaving behind a skeleton. You can also remove taunt from any units like Glacia, Kali, and Benchina if he's unable to kill them. He can also remove Galania's Immortal Drug prior to killing the unit. I'll go over Nartas' counterplay now. To say that Nartas has a lot of counterplay is kind of an understatement. So first off, killing Nartas before he attacks is most ideal. Using units with large amount of pressure in lane is a good way to deal with Nartas. Christina, Alec, Orfina, and Ludmilla are particularly good at killing Nartas if they find themselves in the same lane as him. Nartas is also easily killed if he attacks certain units. Fixed damage counters are strong against Nartas as it ignores the defense that he gains when he attacks. Seto is the best counter to Nartas in that regard. Chaco, Zakon, and Belieth skeletons are capable of taking out Nartas as well. Nartas will also die if he hits Grand Hilder. Grand Hilder reflects all debuffs back to their attacker, so Nartas ends up applying Nullifier and buff prohibition onto himself, which negates his own defense buff. Grand then kills Nartas with the damage reflected. Buff prohibition presents a lot of issues for Nartas as well, as it prevents him from receiving his healing, which is where his defensive buffs are at, and less importantly, his spell memorization, which allows him to attack next turn without charging. The lack of defense means that he's vulnerable to any counter, which includes Rafithia's damage reflect. Mamanir can apply buff prohibition and lock him out of his defensive boost if Nartas attacks her, while Helga can indirectly apply the buff prohibition if she is triggered beforehand. Nartas also has a lot of issues breaking past many tanks with high enough health and large amount of damage reduction, or other kind of guard mechanics. He has troubles breaking through Kali, Valtor, Grand, and Benchina sometimes if he's not buffed enough. Cecilia, Arcan, Kaelin, and Lucius are also good at blocking Nartas. Cecilia can absorb his AoE, whereas Lucius, Arcan, and Kaelin can keep Nartas at bay. So some synergies with Nartas. Nartas relies on being protected, so having taunters that draw aggro away or protect them is preferred. Nartas depends on a lot of strong supporters to help him break through tougher units. Even a plus 14 Nartas has issues killing 10,000 life units with max damage reduction. Having various offensive buffs is helpful. The absolute best support for Nartas is Sola, as her solo buff along with her aura will allow Nartas to almost one-shot any unit unless they have some other gimmick to stay alive. In fact, Sola is one of the key reasons that Nartas is still viable for the most part. Nartas also highly appreciates Galania, as Nartas has a lot of ways to die during this attack. It also helps Nartas can attack as he charges up in the circumstance that he is killed by something random, like Ludmilla. Nartas also shares a set bonus with Alec and Angelica that boosts the trio's attack. While Angelica got the short end of the stick as she doesn't depend much on attack, Nartas and Alec greatly appreciates the boost. Okay, so from my opinion, when the 6 Devils dropped, Nartas was seen to be the most dangerous one that people had to play around. A lot of the metagame involved trying to prep lanes to stall or trap Nartas, or put a Cecilia in front of your DPS lane to ensure that they don't get wiped out. Underground Arena saw a lot of situations where Nartas would duel each other in the same lane, and it was a mind game of who could successfully wipe out the other. Those days are kind of gone. Nartas has too many counters to reliably pull off the satisfying lane wipe that he did before, but this does not mean he's out of the meta. In fact, some of the new characters being introduced help breathe new life into Nartas. The first and most important is Sola, whose crazy offensive buffs and synergy with mages allow Nartas to make up for his buff reliance. Sola by herself grants Nartas enough offensive stats to take out most units in the game. The second of helpful unit sets released is Galania, who gave Nartas much more stability in being able to attack or survive an attack. In the most cases, however, Nartas is still likely not to live past round 2 or 3, he's overall far too fragile. So should you invest in Nartas? My answer is no, unless you really intend to run the Sola formation. Nartas is expensive and he's pretty weak in lower skill levels. Nartas grows incrementally stronger with each skill level. Plus 12 is where you get spell memorization, which sounds like a broken ability on paper. A mage that can attack every round and wipe lanes every turn sounds broken, but in practice it almost never happens because units like Seto exist. Nartas also really needs the bonus damage on his Disaster Bash to score kills against the likes of Levia and other high priority targets without the help from Sola, but his major damage boost to his second skill is locked behind plus 13, 14, and 15. So yeah, it's a very pricey investment. Keeping him at lower skill levels runs major risks of him underperforming at the one thing he's intended to do, which is to wipe out a lane. As mentioned earlier, Sola can help mitigate this by providing him with more than enough damage even if he's underskilled. With Sola, Nartas could just be at plus 3 and be pretty functional. Having him at higher skill levels can help push his consistency, so having him at plus 5 or plus 8 is decent too. Beyond that, it just becomes questionable to whether or not to invest more into Nartas. He gets decent jumps at plus 13 to 15, but it's not really necessary if you're running Sola. However, you won't always have matches where Sola can always stay alive, so having the additional damage is helpful in the case that Sola dies early, or you're just running a different form that doesn't involve her. Those are rare situations that I would not recommend to build for, however, especially since you're investing Legend Scrolls into Nartas, which could be used for other more consistent and generalized unit. Overall, my gut feeling wants to say that Nartas sucks, but I did actually win regular arena champ once by utilizing a Sola form that had Nartas. I needed to make sure I could wipe a lane while avoiding assholes like Kaelin. If it won champ for me, perhaps Nartas is actually pretty decent after all. But if I were to be really honest, Nartas is still pretty suspect. He went from really strong to pretty bad and now situationally decent. Situationally decent is how I'll describe Nartas. If you want to invest legend books and ancient coins into something that is situationally decent, by all means, don't let me stop you. Thanks for watching my Nartas Mercenary Spotlight. Like, subscribe, comment, you know the drill. Thank you.